Welcome back to My Crazy, My Rules. This is where we share real stories, yours and mine, and we have honest conversations about those stories and what those stories are teaching us in life. And I think the conversation I want to have today is about freedom. What does freedom really mean? And when I was 24, 25 years of age, I got to do whatever I wanted to do. I got to say what I wanted, go where I wanted, and to me, that was freedom. But now I'm 64 years old and I don't believe that anymore. Freedom has a price, responsibility. As I was growing up in elementary school, I think the first part of freedom I was learning was protection. I was protected. My mom and dad protected me. They protected my brother, my sister, up until I was 7, and unfortunately, my mom passed away. But after that, it was my dad. My dad protected me. When I went to school, the teachers protected me. The school building itself protected me. Walking back and forth to school, I was protected. There was crossing guards outside. There was parents that would watch out their windows and make sure kind of everything was all right while you were walking back and forth. So I was protected. And I think I experienced safety long before I understood what freedom was. Then, as I got older, I was a senior in high school. I joined the volunteer fire department. I became a firefighter and EMT. And this was when I learned another part of freedom, and that was service. We would be up the firehouse for our duty nights, and Friday nights were probably the best night there was. We would be around, but a bunch of us used to sit around the table and play Uno. I think that was our favorite game. And we'd be sitting around, but you would still have an ear listening to the radios and listening for the different things that were happening, and you would listen to the tones. Every firehouse had their own tones, and when the tones went off, things changed quickly. So our tones went off, and very quickly the cards got thrown onto the table. There was chairs shuffling backwards, people running for the turnout area, getting their gear, getting on their equipment as fast as they could to get out the door and to help whoever it was that needed help. But what was really interesting at this is that we only knew two things when we were being dispatched on a call. We knew where the emergency was and what it was. That was it. Where and what. We weren't told the race of the person. We weren't told the religion of the person. We weren't told their political affiliation or were they rich? Were they poor? The only thing we knew is what was the emergency. And part of this, and this is service, is that you served everyone, you helped everyone, and you treated everyone equally. Um, Freedom isn't only about what I received, freedom was also about what I was willing to give. And then I went in the Air Force. And let me tell you something, anybody that's gone into basic training for any of the services know you drill and you march and you drill and you march and you might stop to eat and then you're going to drill and march some more. And that's what we were doing one day. We were just drilling and marching, and we had probably been out there for about 2.5 hours, and it was hot. It was San Antonio. It was only March, but let me tell you, San Antonio March, mid 90s, pretty hot. And one of the airmen fell out. We called it DFO'd. He done fell out, and he was unconscious on the ground. And what struck me at this point was half of the flight, half of the people that were marching and drilling got upset. They were so upset because they had to stop. They now were going to have to redo everything. And a few of us immediately ran to start taking care of the airmen and the TI, our training instructor. He made sure someone was going to get the medics, and they came and they took him to Wilford Hall, which was the hospital that we used on base. And then we don't get to stop. We don't get to just say, okay, hey, we're going to go home now. Nope, our TI got us right back into formation, and we started marching and drilling again. And one of the things we noticed was our TI was angry. He was upset, and he was drilling us pretty hard for about another hour and a half. And then he had us come and sit down. And he told us, he said, I'm really upset with all of you. And we didn't have any clue of why. And he was like, look, this was a teammate of yours. You have a responsibility. When you have a team, you don't get upset at the person that has a problem. You help them. And half of you didn't. And that was a problem. And he said, there's something in the teamwork that's trust. He trusts you and you trust him. And this is somebody that may be saving your life one day. This is somebody that you may be saving their life. They may be saving yours. You have to have the trust. And that's what he really showed us that day. And I understood the more responsibility I accepted, the more freedom I earned. And then I went on to become a 911 dispatcher. And that was quite a powerful time in my life. And one of the things I learned at this time was listening. That was a part of it. It was listening. And we had many jobs when we worked in the communication center. You had the call takers who answered the phone. You had the 911 dispatcher for the police side. You had the 911 dispatcher for the fire side. You had those that were working the criminal desk. And I happened to be on the phones one evening, and you always knew what kind of phone call you were getting, whether it was routine or emergency, because the way the phone rang and the way it sounded. And my 911 line went off, and I grabbed it very quickly and I answered it, and I did it the way I do every single 911 call. 911. What's the address of your emergency? All I heard was screaming and yelling from a lady, and nothing could be understood. And I don't get to react. I don't get to shout and tell her, stop, tell me what's going on. I have to be calm and continue. 911. What's the address of your emergency? And here's what I don't get to know when this is going on. This was a mom and dad that had gone out on vacation. They had a good time. They were gone for a week and a half. They left their 19-year-old son at home alone. Well, he's 19. He's more than old enough to be home alone. And they were getting back from this nice vacation. They had pulled into the driveway. They were unloading the car, and they were going to go inside the house. And dad unlocks the front door, and the two of them start going in, and they notice it's very dark. But they look around, and there's some candles lit just in all around the living room. And at the far end of the living room was their son. And he was just standing there waiting for them to come in the door. He had a gun to his head. And when mom and dad made eye contact with him, he pulled the trigger. Dad ran to help him right away. Mom started screaming and yelling and ran to the phone and called 911. And that's where I come on. And this is what I need to listen to. And I have to get from her all the important information. And unfortunately, part of this information is he still breathing? Well, that means she needs to go over and check. Is his heart still beating? And I am having to listen to everything that is going on without reacting, staying calm, and helping her. And this is where I learned that sometimes when you listen, helping isn't fixing. Help is just listening and hearing. So, I mean, I've been a firefighter. I've been an airman. I've been a dispatcher. I've been a parent, a grandparent, a great grandparent. And every chapter of this life has taught me something. Somewhere along the way, freedom stopped being about me. Freedom without responsibility becomes selfishness. And I couldn't understand that at the time, even through all these lessons, until I remembered a lesson my dad taught me. Now, my dad, smartest man I ever met. just incredible. And not only was he smart in that he had a bachelor's and a master's in math and electronics, he was smart in life. He had been through World War II and he had learned a lot. Now, I mentioned earlier that my mom passed away when I was 7, and at 7 years old, I didn't understand death. The only thing I knew for sure, I wasn't gonna see my mom again, not in this life. And that bothered me, and I guess I don't know how long, maybe a year or 2 years later, I went up to my dad and I said, "Dad, I don't understand." And he looks at me and goes, "What don't you understand?" And I said, "I don't understand if there's a God or if there's a higher being, why would he take mom away? She was with 3 children that adored her and a husband that loved her, and he just took her." And he said, "Ben, sit down. Let's talk." And he said, "Our dog, Tippy," and Tippy, man, Tippy was a great dog. Tippy was a full beagle. Her full name was Lady Tippy Elkridge III, if I'm not mistaken, and she was just as smart as could be. And he said, "Every day you go to school. You leave about 7:30 in the morning, you probably get back around 3:30 in the afternoon, and you do this every day, 5 days a week." He says, "Does Tippy have any idea what you're doing?" And I was like, "No." He said, "Why? You're doing the same thing." I said, "Well, I'm smarter than Tippy is. I'm a person and she's only a dog." And he looked at me and he said, "Exactly. Tippy can't understand because she's not where she needs to be. She doesn't know what she needs to know because she's only a dog and you're so much higher of a being." And that's when he said, sometimes we don't understand life because we don't have the perspective to understand it. And that really hit home. And to me, today, freedom means respecting people for whatever their religious belief is, whatever their belief in parenting is, whatever their opinion about something happens to be. Their freedom is they can express it, and so is mine. My freedom is I can express and I can worship any way I want to, and your freedom matters. My freedom matters, and the thing that I want to get at here is neither of us get to erase the other's freedom. My freedom isn't so important that it gets to erase yours, and your freedom isn't so important that it gets to erase mine. Freedom meant at 25 years of age, nobody could tell me what to do. Today, freedom to me means doing what's right, even when nobody can make you. That's my crazy. Those are my rules. What are yours? And I am going to close with this. If you enjoyed what we were just talking about, please give me a like, subscribe to the channel, and I will be waiting to hear your story. Thank you.